The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Well, let's head to the Eastern Corn Belt for a late season agronomic update. How are things looking in parts of Indiana and Ohio as we get ready for fall harvest season? Joining us now, he is an agronomist based in Indiana, covers parts of northern Indiana into Ohio. Kyle Malcolm with LG Seeds is with us here today on the show. Kyle, it's good to talk with you, sir. Hope all is well.
Good to talk to you as well.
Well, I'd love to just start as we get into harvest season and thinking about the way this growing season has gone. I know the impact the weather and crop disease has had on really a lot of parts of the country. It's been a talking point. How have things been in your territory here as we get ready to harvest?
I'd say the biggest thing is variable, and I would say that's usually the case every year, but I feel like this year's probably more variable than years past. So me covering northern Indiana and the state of Ohio is kind of two different worlds this spring. So you looked at Indiana was much like the central and western Corn Belt, definitely very dry, got off to fast starts, fast pace. A lot of stuff got planted, April and first part of May, and really got to that eastern part of Indiana and spilling over into Ohio, especially Ohio, just stayed wet, cooler, wet soil. And so a lot of that stuff did not get planted until mid-May, late May, even on to June. So definitely kind of been two different worlds. I feel like early on in the spring, since then, rainfall has been very, very variable. Kind of depends on how you were lucky or not. But just in general, everybody's finishing off the growing season quite dry like we did a year ago at this point. But everything's holding in, staying a little bit stronger than we did last year so far.
Well, how has the weather and crop disease and more, how's that impacted stalk health and standability, especially in those cornfields? I mean, just thinking about that first, what have you seen? How has that impacted things?
So especially on this last, 5-6 weeks, it's been extremely dry for the whole Eastern Corn Belt, I would say. And stalks are definitely starting to take a toll. We're seeing, corn firing up just from the lack of nutrients and nitrogen being able to move up through that plant. Those plants are definitely starting to cannibalize as it's trying to put everything into it. So as guys are getting out there, getting to harvest, it's going to be pretty critical to keep an eye on everything, from those drought-stricken areas, but especially when I look at more that eastern side of Indiana getting into Ohio, just from some of those wet soil conditions. I know we got into late May, 1st of June, and some people, you throw the book out. It's time to get planted. And so some of those fields maybe didn't get planted in the most ideal conditions. And now I'm starting to see crown rot pop up in a couple of those fields where you see the ghosting out there, the dead plant. And I had a field day last night and doing two here today as well. And definitely, walk out into some of these fields and, you do the pinch test or see the ghosted plants, and there's nothing left in the stalk. So definitely something to be concerned out or keep an eye at.
Well, you mentioned maybe the pinch test, for instance. How do we scout for stalk health and prioritize fields for harvest? Because I think that's going to be the big key here as well, is if we have stalk health that's not doing too good, we might want to try and get in those fields first before others. Right, Kyle?
Yeah, so I'd say the first thing, or the most common one, is walking out and kind of doing the push test. So go out and push that stalk over to the row next to it. And if it bends back, you've got a good healthy stalk. And if it, breaks over either at the root or, further up, you've got some stalk lodging or root lodging. And definitely going to be a little bit concerned. Also the pinch test, to really go down to the base of that corn plant. If you can pinch that and there's nothing, in between, and you can push them together, your stalks are pretty much trash at that point, and definitely need to be concerned that it might not stand too long. So definitely go out there, take a look. And I mean, I think a lot of it's going to come down to what kind of conditions did you plant the product in, and then how dry have you been, or what's your condition look, finishing off. Not everybody's going to be an issue, not every field's going to be an issue this fall, but definitely take a look. And most growers know that their problem fields are the ones that maybe, they've struggled with in the past, or, definitely had drier conditions or didn't plant in the most ideal conditions.
Kyle, what about from a fertility standpoint here when it comes to corn and thinking about nutrients and maybe some of that nutrient loss, nitrogen, things like that as we've gone through this growing season with the way the weather has been? What have you seen in your area? What are some thoughts, some tips you would share with producers?
So one thing that I would say I'm seeing more this year than maybe in the previous years was as we got planted, especially in Indiana on those April and first part of May, there's a lot of nitrogen that got put on pretty early, and May was cool and wet. In June we had some big rain events, so I think we lost some nitrogen, had some leaching, and then really when we've got late into the growing season, really for the last 4 weeks have been extremely dry. So although maybe in some fields we had some nitrogen loss, and maybe some fields there's plenty of nitrogen out there, we've really started to see this corn fire up just from a lack of nitrogen, as that corn plant is not able to move any nutrients up and through the plant just from how dry we've been from the dry conditions. And so we're seeing that corn plant kind of cannibalize itself, pull all the nutrients and nitrogen from that plant, as its job is to produce and reproduce as much as it possibly can. It's going to put everything it possibly can into that ear of corn and sacrifice its standability and stalk. So if you're driving around and seeing some of those fields that are maybe starting to fire, look really yellow from a loss of nitrogen, it like I said, it could be from leaching, it could be just from not being able to uptake anything. And so as it's cannibalizing and trying to put everything in, let's take a look at that and make sure we get out there and get our crop harvested on a timely manner.
We're talking with Kyle Malcolm, LG Seeds agronomist, covering parts of northern Indiana and Ohio. Thinking about this seed selection, of course, we got harvest in front of us here, but we are thinking about 2026. When it comes to seed selection, particularly on corn acres, I know that's got to be part of the standability discussion as well and more. What are some thoughts you would have there as we're making decisions for next year?
For me, the three main things that are going to come to mind is emergence, standability, and then plant health. So when we really look at those corn on corn acres, you're going to have a lot of residue and trash from the previous year. So you need a crop that's going to get up and get through that residue and be, a strong emerger, but then also one that's got, strong stalks, because stalks are going to be an issue, especially starting to get into some of those corn on corn. And as far as, you're going to have increased disease pressure in that point just from, not being able to rotate anything back out. So then, the third point is just that overall strong product that's got strong agronomics, strong plant health.
Anything on the soybean side at all you would mention just about this growing season or in general? I know we've talked a lot about corn, but curious, anything for you from a soybean perspective?
I think the biggest thing in it, the whole industry's talked about it for the last 5 years, 10 years, it's gaining more steam of getting those, soybeans planted early. Planting soybeans early and in early maturity, we've seen the big impact with it. So I actually had a grower send me pictures from soybeans planted March 27th in Northeast Ohio versus some beans planted on May 12th. The beans planted on March 27th had 108 and 153 pods on the plants, and the ones planted middle of May had 18 and 45 pods. So, definitely a big difference when we think about soybeans. Don't be afraid to push the envelope and get out there and get early. These beans are becoming more and more resilient.
Kyle, good thoughts. Anything final you would share or reiterate with folks here on the show today?
I think the biggest thing is, be out there actively looking at your fields. A lot of people think we get into August, the crop's made, got some rain, there's nothing to worry about. And that may be true as far as yield goes. But when we think about stalks and standability, there's a lot of stuff going into the, our crops late season that maybe we get forgetful about, need to be on top of mind as we get out there and make a successful harvest.
Well, and I know if folks have questions, they can reach out to their local agronomist, such as yourself. They can learn more online, lgseeds.com. With that, LG Seeds agronomist Kyle Malcolm, thanks for joining us here on the show today. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jesse.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@MarketTalkAg and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Ag on YouTube.